When I was 12 years old, I became a Jack Nicholson superfan. This happened almost overnight on an evening in February 1997 when I first saw The Shining.
Here's Johnny!
In those 20 plus years, I never stopped being a Jack superfan.
I want the truth! You can't handle the truth!
Get ready for You Don't Know Jack, hosted by me. Subscribe today on your favorite podcast platform.
Ladies and gentlemen, this is our main event.
Hello, ladies and gentlemen. What is going on? Welcome to Throwing Jabs Podcast. I'm Big Jace, your host as always, joined with my man Joe Aguirre and Jared Jones, and we have a lot to talk about. We got a lot of fights from last week to recap. We got some fight announcements to talk about, as well as we're going to talk about the MMA Mount Rushmore for heavyweights, as well as recap UFC 255 tonight. So let's dive in, starting off with the UFC from last weekend as Rafael dos Anjos defeats a Paul Felder coming off 5 days notice in his return in dos Anjos' return bout to the UFC, to the lightweight division via split decision. Jared, what did you think of this fight?
Good fight, close fight. All respect to both of these guys. I think dos Anjos won. I think a split decision is a little kooky. I don't know who the judge that had it 3-2 Felder was. Either of you guys score it for Felder?
No,
yeah.
No,
So
not even close.
No. That seemed like an outlier to me, to say the least.
I don't get how you can two judges can give every round to dos Anjos, and then another judge sees 3 rounds completely different and gives it to Felder. That just doesn't make sense.
No,
might have been the same judge in the Taylor Gutierrez fight who somehow saw something materializing around that no one else saw, and that's why the sport is so subjective. Because your question was, where does dos Anjos fit in?
Yeah,
and I think that's a good one. He's currently ranked 6th amongst the big boys. He's already lost to Ferguson and Khabib. Obviously, this thing with Felder, the split decision on 5 days' notice, it's not really what you're looking for. Now, to be fair, dos Anjos has wins over Donald Cerrone twice. He's got Nate Diaz. He's got Anthony Pettis. He's got Benson Henderson. But all that happened when Obama was still in office. Thank you. He spent the last 5 years at welterweight, and he beat Robbie Lawler, but he also lost to Colby Covington. He lost to Kamaru Usman. Then he dropped back down to show us how good he is at lightweight. Felder came out of the broadcast booth, as you mentioned, 5 days out, had to drop 20 pounds. Dos Anjos might as well have fought Joe Rogan, who may have given him a better fight. So here's where he sticks. Here's where he fits. He could keep on beating guys like Felder and Rob Emerson and Anthony Enjo Kouani, George Soteropoulos. Those are all fill-in guys, literally last-minute fill-in guys that he's beaten before. That's a whole list of literally replacement fighters. Those are the guys he does well against. So if he wants to stick around and get beat up by Gaethje or Poirier, great. You could be like that kind of fodder for the division.
And I think that's what he's got to get. He's 36 years old. I think that's exactly the fight he's got to get. If you're him, that's what you want. And I mean, to be fair, you're reading lost to this guy. You're saying beat this guy, lost, but those names, man, fought Nurmagomedov, Dunham, Cerrone twice, Henderson, Diaz. You went through some of these. This is a who's who of the best guys at the top of that division. So having the win over Felder, all those other things considered, Joe, I agree with you. This guy's going to get beat if he moves up to a Gaethje or a Poirier. But those are the fights I want to see if I'm in the Dos Anjos camp all day.
Yeah, definitely. And also, big shout out to Paul Felder. 5 days notice, comes in, takes a fight, and then
all respect,
2 days later goes and does commentary for Dana White's Tuesday Night Contender Series. This man is wild. And just shout out to him. But also, like, the big thing with Dos Anjos at lightweight was he was a power puncher. And I want to know if you guys saw a little bit of that in this fight. Because I know Felder, he's got a tough chin. He doesn't really go down. He doesn't really get knocked out. So, like, maybe if Dos Anjos can rekindle that power and find it, he might find his way working to the top of the division, but still, like, I think right now, as he stands, he's a gatekeeper. If you can beat Dos Anjos, you deserve to take on a Gaethje, a Poirier, someone like that. If you can't, then you're at the 10 to 15 mark in the rankings.
Yeah, no, and I agree with that. I think the guys that have beat him, the last, let's see, 2, 4, 6, 7, is Nurmagomedov, Alvarez, Ferguson, Covington, Usman, Edwards, and Chiesa. So aside from those last two, which are the two most recent ones, right before he fought Felder, I mean, it's falling off here. You kind of need that Gaethje fight now. You need that. And hey, this guy's dangerous. 36 years old, but he's fought at the top of the game for a really long time, and he's dangerous to anybody in the division. I think I think those are winnable fights for him. I wouldn't favor him, but they're winnable.
He's good enough to fight the big boys, and I'm not sure if he's good enough to beat him anymore, especially the top guys now. You know, again, as I hit that list of guys he's beaten, that was a long time ago. It was 8 years ago. You know, it was another lifetime for him. So to have a fight like this doesn't really inspire me to be like, well, let's get the next young guy up here. And he's got to do better than this going forward. I'll say that. But, you know, a win's a win. So I guess you could feel good about yourself.
All right. Yeah, I agree with that. But now let's move on to some boxing as the number one pound for pound, the WBO welterweight champ, Terence Bud Crawford knocks out KO'd Brook in the 4th round, remains undefeated, retains his championship. Jared, what'd you think?
This kid is a stylistic nightmare.
Yeah.
For everybody in boxing. When you watch him fight, you can see why he was the boogeyman for so long. This was a jab. I don't care if he cocked it, he turned it over, his shoulder looked like a crowd, whatever. It was a over the top punch with his front hand from his front foot. He knocked KO'd Brook out with a jab. Man, this guy's on another level. And Crawford Spence, I don't think Spence is there. Honestly, I know a lot of people like Spence. He's undefeated. Split decision in his last fight. He's got a win over Brook, but that was a jab. That was a jab. He knocked out one of the best fighters in his division. One of the guys, I mean, and it wasn't, the odds weren't off the chart one way or the other. I mean, he was obviously favored. But what was the prop bet on 4th round knockout with a jab? Those are Katie Taylor numbers. That was a jab. Woo, this Crawford kid can fight. I'm not sure Spence is ready. And I'd love to see what Crawford does next. You know, and Spence, speaking of which, has Danny Garcia on December 5th. Do not overlook my boy Danny Swift Garcia. He's quick, and another guy who's fought a lot of the guys at the top of the division. And Spence hasn't looked terribly impressive in his last fight. So, yeah, don't overlook that fight. And Crawford will beat either one of them. This guy's another animal.
Sure, he did what Spence and Triple G couldn't do. It's funny, too. Brook was talking a lot of smack going into this fight, talking about maybe he was going to knock Bud Crawford out. And I watched Bud on ESPN talking to Max Kellerman, and he let it fly, man. He was pissed. He dropped an F-bomb. Kellerman had to remind him that they were not on cable television, that it was some network TV. But to see Bud as angry and fired up as he was told me all I needed to know about this fight. It seemed to me that every punch Terence Crawford threw in this fight, he wanted to make it hurt. And he did for most of the night. I had this one going knockout by the 6th. Certainly didn't think it was going to be the jab, Jared. So, I'd
have lost that bet too, though, Joe, to be fair.
Absolutely. A dominating fight. And the funny thing is I don't think he's even mad at Kell Brook. He's mad at the sport of boxing. That's where Bud's rage is coming from right now. So don't let it be misplaced. As for Spence, saying yesterday that he felt a 60-40 split in his favor is the way this fight should go. And Bud was like, I don't need to fight you. I'm me and you're you. And I'll tell you what, last October, when I heard the welterweight champion of the world flipped his Ferrari in a horrific car crash and he might not live.
Yeah.
And I hate to admit this, I was really relieved when I heard it wasn't Terence Crawford. Is that wrong? Is that bad?
Yeah.
I didn't think Spence could afford a Ferrari. I'll be quite honest. But I know this is mean. But here's
Terence celebrities, though, justify that.
Terence Crawford. Listen.
When I say my boy Danny Garcia, it's because I know him. But look, I'm a
Look,
I mean, if you don't, those are celebrities, though. Justify that.
Bud is a Hummer, and Spence is a Ferrari. And if they were to drive straight at each other in a collision course, who would win? Not to mention, I think Crawford always wears his seatbelt. I'm just saying.
This has taken a dark twist here.
Crawford's my guy, and I'll tell you what, I've got more for Bob Arum if you'd like me to continue.
Mine has always been hot dumb girls. Lamborghinis, they're fun to test drive, but you wouldn't want to own one. Jeez. But Spencer, I mean, that's still a horrible thing to have happen. Just to touch on the.
Oh, it is, and I'm being mean, but I don't really mean that. But he's being stupid right now. Just get the fight done. Do the fight everybody wants to see. Stop being a baby. You're not getting 60-40.
Yeah, that doesn't make sense.
Like it isn't. Crawford can't duck Spence. Spence is ducking Crawford. Crawford's up here. Spence is down here. You got to come up here.
Somebody needs to tell him that because I don't think it's quite gotten into his head just yet. And that's concerning, not to mention he's got a fight that he needs to win. Pretty big one, as you mentioned. So win that one before you start talking junk, dude. You might your per split might be 0 if you don't win your next fight. So
well, and Swift, I mean, hey, to be fair, this guy, a la Molinari, a la Winky, fast guys, Purnell, this guy's fast and has a good chin. So he's really hard to hit clean. And even when you do, he won't go away. So you're talking about not overlooking that fight. Tell me who looked good against Danny Garcia. Go ahead, I'll wait. Who looked really good against Danny Garcia? The fighter doesn't exist. That's not how it happened. This is a good, solid dude that you're going to have to, you better pack a lunch, man. And don't, and calling out Crawford and trying to get that fight before you beat Garcia. That's 2 weeks away. You better stay off Twitter for a couple weeks, maybe do some training.
Yeah.
Now, the other thing, Bob Arum is now talking junk about Bud, which is insane. He said he's lost enough money in his last 3 fights, he could have bought a home in Malibu. I'll assume he means another one. But let me get this straight. Crawford's promoter said Terence needs to get out there and promote himself more. I'm going to say that again. Bud Crawford's promoter told Bud that he needs to promote himself more. You imagine if your trainer, Jared, was like, you need to train yourself. I can't just be the guy that trains you all the time. I don't know what's going on.
Public defenders like that.
Yeah, look, if Bob Arum wants to go in and if Bob Arum wants to fight around in place of Bud, yeah, then I guess that's – otherwise, what is it you'll be doing while I'm promoting and training to whoop some butt? I mean, come on.
Yeah.
Horrible.
That's on you, pal.
Yeah, and also this is ESPN. I watch a lot of ESPN. How many previews, how many trailers for this fight did you see? I didn't see that many. And how many are highlighting that Bud Crawford is the pound-for-pound number one fighter? Not that many. So he's not doing his job. And Jared, you sent us a thing in our group chat about Terence Crawford wanting to get dropped from the promotion. And that makes sense. He's not doing his job. To put the blame on the best, Terence Crawford doesn't need to talk smack. Terence Crawford doesn't need to do anything. He backs it up in the ring. And
he's one of the only guys that shouldn't need to do that.
Yeah, and even before, the big gripe on Terence Crawford before was that he was a slow starter. He was meticulous. He figured things out. Then you go to the Amir Khan fight where he gets a knockdown in the first round, and then you got this fourth-round knockout. What more do you want from this guy? I don't care what you want him to do outside the ring. He's proven it in the ring.
Hey, but devil's advocate, I mean, I just had a flurry about this. I was just talking about this 2-3 weeks ago. I frown on it too. I'm with you guys. It's very upsetting, yada, yada, but he's being honest with the guy. In yesterday's gym, you walked into an old rusty underground basement with the heavy bags and the old trainer with the crusty voice and the cigarettes because you could still smoke inside, and you were a bum. And that's what you got in today's world. You need to, hey, you're the best in here with that jump rope kid. But how many followers do you have on Twitter? Because you're going to need to have both of those built up to a certain level if you're ever going to make it anywhere in this game. So, I mean, in today's world, in today's boxing world, you want to be honest with the people who are coming up, and it's something Terence Crawford could be better at. I'm just playing devil's advocate. I don't like it any more than you guys do. But to be fair, that's got to come from somebody other than your promoter. I mean,
yeah.
I might have tapped somebody else and said, hey, tell him he could do a better job promoting himself, but not the promoter, because then what the hell am I paying you for?
And the implication from Spence is, in essence, I don't need Bud Crawford because Bud doesn't draw crowds.
Yeah.
That's seemingly what his argument is.
Yeah, and you're bugging.
I mean, and again, it's sort of based on the foolish statements of Bob Arum.
Well, it's like what Joshua said about respecting the WBA belt. Like, what happened to wanting to be the best fighter? Who draws crowds and which belt they have? It shouldn't be the driving force behind who you want to fight next. Spence, do you want people to think you're the best fighter in the world? Then you're going to have to beat Bud Crawford. Barring him getting into some kind of life-threatening accident, you're going to have to beat him in the ring.
What is Bob Arum doing in the way of helping to promote his fighter by basically saying, and the other fighter then turning around and saying, well, even your promoter says you don't draw crowds, that you're a big loss, you're a big loser for money in all of these fights. How is Bob Arum making the job he already sucks at any easier for himself by taking that route? I'm just curious.
Well, and it's like self-defamation almost. Right?
Yes.
I mean, you're threatening your livelihood, finances, like your job, with your comments. When you do that to somebody else, they can bring you to court for it. You're doing that to yourself, dude.
Yeah, that's insane.
Like, Terrence, like, he's obviously not helping Bob Arum promote because he's not like a big social media presence, but you got to work around that. You got to be able to, like, there is a story, like, I envision Bud Crawford, like, make him an American hero. He's from Nebraska, born, raised. He's doing all this stuff. There's a lot of story to build off of and create. And I don't know what Bob Arum's doing. He's just sitting there letting the fight speak for itself, which it should. But you got to do a little bit more if you're so focused on money and selling the fight.
Well, and that's it. It's hard to think that promotionally we could do better with Clovercrest Media Group, the three of us, and a burner account or two. That we could do probably a better job promote, because he's a great fighter. Yeah. I mean, the highlights are there.
Look, you've got like Superman from Nebraska, right? Yeah. I mean, a young African-American guy, like a family man, exemplary kind of guy. My God, G.I. Joe should make him an action figure. Like, this would be, you know what I mean? Why is this guy not throwing out the first pitch somewhere? Why is this guy not on SmackDown with The Rock, doing a bit? That's where these guys are failing. I mean, it's a shame. This is one of the best boxers in the last decade out of this sport. Even had nothing to promote him. And for the promoter to literally be the guy complaining about it just makes it a bigger joke. If you can't sell this guy to America, you suck. It's amazing.
No, yeah.
It's ridiculous.
Yeah. How bad are you at your job if you're having trouble you're a boxing promoter?
Yeah, get me an all-American family guy from the Midwest, undefeated, pound for pound best in the world. I don't know. I don't know how to promote this guy. I can't figure it out.
Social media and good at promoting himself. Bad at being on social media and promoting himself is good for today's fighter. Broner talked himself right out of the game. That's good news. From everybody else's viewpoint, except for yours, that's good news. We don't want him out there promoting himself, getting into Twitter beefs and stuff. We don't need that.
No.
Just have him go out there and win fights. The rest of us can talk for him. There's still so much internet Floyd Mayweather chatter. Floyd doesn't have to go on. He does, but he doesn't have to. You know how many people go online and do that for him? You don't have to do that. We don't need that from you. Terence Crawford, I don't care what he says. You keep doing what you're doing, my man. You get in the ring, you win fights. Keep doing what you're doing.
Yes, sir. All right. Going from the number one pound for pound to the number one pound for pound women's fighter. As also this weekend, we had Katie Taylor just outclassed, dominant, unanimous decision victory over Miriam Gutierrez. What'd you think of your girls' fight there, Jared?
Nah, you guys go first.
Joe,
okay. Joe, you watched the fight?
I did, and I got to tell you, what can I say about Gutierrez? She went the distance. That's what I can say. Katie took every round. I will say, look, kudos to Gutierrez, because boy, you gotta have guts to stand in there. There's no if the ref had stopped that fight anywhere, or her corner had thrown in the towel, you'd have been like, oh yeah. Any great round job, after the fourth, I'd have been like, that was a great effort. Only got dropped once in the fight, which I thought was pretty amazing. But I'll tell you what, to watch Katie Taylor fight somebody who's maybe a little bit closer to her class was really enjoyable, man, because the hand speed, it was such a work of art. I really enjoyed it. A knockout might have been fun, but I thought this was even better. So great win for Katie Taylor. And Miriam Gutierrez, thanks for coming. That was amazing. Yeah. Really great.
You said a little bit closer, like still a little bit closer is universes away. Like Katie Taylor is just so much better than it is like you said, it's a work of art and you have to appreciate it. But part of me while I'm watching that just goes like, I just want to see her get challenged. I want to see her face some adversity. But I mean, she did everything right that she needed to, and she got the win.
Yeah, look, I think Jared, typically speaking, I think when you're the best in the world, you're really mostly fighting yourself. I mean, it's right. It's if I'm unfocused, if I make a critical mistake. Otherwise, this is what you expect. This is to me is, again, we all love a knockout, but you beat somebody senseless for the entire fight, round by round. That's great. That's what you came there for. And I really appreciate what Katie Taylor did as a fan a lot.
Oh yeah. And you don't have to be a fan of the art of boxing to appreciate what she does. And that'll bring you in. And then you'll end up on the art when she's done. If you want to see an inspirational story, Miriam Gutierrez, look her up. Not the first time she survived adversity. Gutsy effort, but outclassed and hit with perfect shots on a regular basis. There was a moment, I think it was about 1:10 into the 5th round, when Gutierrez landed a punch. It wasn't a great punch, but it was a punch. And the announcer went, oh, there was one. She got one. Did you see it? He's like he just had so much happiness about the fact that one punch landed. Unreal.
Yeah. This is someone that needs to be mainstream. People need to see this more because it is boxing. Like she isn't going out there just knocking people out like Mike Tyson or Amanda Nunes. She's going out there just outclassing people. You enjoy the art. You see it like what I've been saying about Lomachenko. Like people need to see this and understand what boxing truly is and understand the art of it. Because if not, like casual fans are just knockout hungry when they see fights. And
well,
this
you're
is
missing if you appreciate and respect the art of boxing and don't know Katie Taylor, you're missing one of the best of your generation. Like this is one of the best fighters on the planet for this generation.
Yeah.
Hands down.
You know, it's funny that you say that because again, I think this is again where a promoter is completely failing a fighter because look, you've got the greatest female fighter of all time in the era of the Me Too movement, of the female empowerment. This would be the perfect opportunity. I mean, maybe the feminists don't know who Katie Taylor is. I like to think they could hold somebody like this up and be like, when we say you could be anything, girl, we mean the best fighter in the world.
Well, an attractor, I don't want to turn it into that thing, but it's not. I mean, some people are harder to promote based on their aesthetic. I think you know what I'm trying to say here, but Katie Taylor's an attractive female. That's obviously not something that's holds her back. I always felt like that with Holly Holm. She just kept winning everything, and you said Holly Holm to the average person until she knocked out Ronda Rousey. Nobody knew who she was, and we've got a bit of that here with Katie Taylor, where people are fight fans and are missing the opportunity to see one of the greatest they're ever going to get to see. There's sometimes you're watching, and I got this during that fight. You're watching somebody and you're like, when Shane Mosley beat Oscar De La Hoya and he was on steroids. I remember when Evander Holyfield beat Mike Tyson and he was on steroids. But I remember during the fight, before we knew those guys were drugged, thinking, this is one of the best I'm ever going to get to see. Live, right now, he's fighting in the ring with another guy who's the best out there, or up, the top shelf type guys, and I am watching one of the greatest. Loma just gave it to me a year ago. This is one of the best at his footwork. I watched him move and went, this is one of the best I'm ever going to get to see. And Katie Taylor's got that. I saw that more in her fight than Bud Crawford's. Both very impressive fighters, but when I think of the art and the skill of boxing and something you want to show somebody on how you're supposed to do it, Katie Taylor is just on another planet, man. That's next level stuff she's doing.
You're right. And I'm going to highlight this comment right here. Eddie Hearns is not doing the best with Katie Taylor. Katie Taylor should be a lot bigger than she is. Great. They're headlining cards with her. But Eddie Hearns has his nose so far up Anthony Joshua's ass, he doesn't respect Katie Taylor. And you need to. She's that good.
She doesn't have a Ruiz.
No, she doesn't. Because no one's even that close.
Maybe she and Bud can start their own promotion.
Oh.
That'd be a best guy. There you go. Best Fighter Promotions presents Bud Crawford and Katie Taylor. And for the rest of you, boop, all set. Party of two. Please give me those two fighters. I'll make a career out of this. I'd become the richest man on the planet in no time.
You're listening. Clover Crest Media Group wants you.
I'm telling you, man. I mean, that's insane, dude. You're telling me that you can't get a camera crew to follow the guy for the day, get on his social media and just post some stuff off of it? Give me a break. Katie Taylor, you guys watch Katie Taylor just working out in the gym? I have. I think it's great. I know you have, Jared. Put that stuff out there. You know, push that stuff. I should see that stuff everywhere. I don't. I have to look for it. And I hate that I have to look for it.
You have to build a narrative because they're that good. Like, people should be watching. But, all right. That's going to do it for recaps of last week's fights. Let's talk a little bit about some fight announcements. Starting off, Canelo back in the ring after his contract disputes. Seems as if it's only the contract dispute was only with Golden Boy Promotions. He's back on DAZN, taking on Callum Smith. Jared, what do you think of this matchup?
Well, I think we lost Jared for a second there, so I'll tell you what I think of this fight. Look, Callum Smith has a 7-inch height advantage and an 8-inch reach advantage, which is certainly going to help with these posters. I don't know if it's going to do much more. He's a decent British fighter, like KO'd Brook, but this isn't British boxing that we're concerned about. This guy's good enough to get to the dance. No one's taking him home. No one's taking him in this fight, that's for sure. And my question, of course, is why fight at super middleweight when you spent the last decade trying to unify the middleweight division? That's where I'm confused. And there's still fights out there for him. Triple G, the Charlo brothers, Derevyachenko's out there, Demetrius Andre. I mean, there's lots of fights. He wants to do this for the easy pickings. Knock yourself out. Enjoy that. But to me, this is Mayweather mode in full effect. This doesn't surprise me. Kovalev over Beaterbev. We see what's going on, Canelo. Maybe Rocky Fielding wants a rematch. I don't know what you're thinking, but nobody wants to see these fights, and no one's going to be impressed when you win them. So
I will say it is a little bit better than Rocky Fielding. It's a little bit better than a couple of the other guys, and I'd like to see it. I wish it was someone like an Andrade, someone else, but it just hasn't been, and I don't know. I'm excited to see it, that he got over the hurdle of the legality stuff, and now he's back to fighting. That I think is most important.
You want to see the guy in the ring because he's a good fighter, but come on. There's fights out there to be had. There are fights to be had. It's one thing if you cleaned out the division, you want to come on. This is not what's happening here. So I don't like it.
Yeah. All right, another fight on DAZN. It was originally scheduled in December. Now got moved to January due to Luke Campbell testing positive for COVID. Ryan Garcia versus Luke Campbell. Winner's probably going to take on Devin Haney. What do you think of this matchup, Joe?
Look, the gold medalist. My initial thought was, oh yeah, this seems like it should be a pretty light fight for Garcia. But I'll tell you what, I think Campbell, assuming that this COVID thing doesn't cause him issues going forward, he's got quite a boxer on his hands here. This is going to be a really good matchup, the kind of fight I want to see. So I'm excited for this one for sure. And again, I hope, unfortunately, the way COVID's obviously on the rise again, people getting hit left and right. Yeah. Seemingly most of them are able to come back. within a couple months. So let's hope that's the case here, because this would be a really great matchup.
Yeah, I'm intrigued. First real test for the young Ryan Garcia, and he's just been manhandling people, knocking people out left and right, and now he's got an actual boxer, someone with actual skills. So I'm very intrigued to see how he matches up and see if he can take on this first real test and see where he actually falls in the lightweight division. But and then moving on to UFC, former featherweight champ Max Holloway takes on Calvin Kattar, featherweight main event of a UFC fight night in January. Thoughts?
Look, I've talked about him before. I love Max Holloway. I really do. The guy's a banger. This is going to be his 5th fight since April of 2019, but he's lost 3 out of 4 of them. And basically, the one win was where he beat the bejesus out of Brian Ortega. I like Kattar. I think he's a good fighter. He's won a couple in a row, but that seems to be his thing. He wins a couple in a row, then he loses, wins 2 in a row, and he loses, and he's coming in on the 2 wins. So if you're looking at his record, it almost looks like he might be due for a loss. The other thing I find interesting in this fight is he's got a nice long reach, and he's taller. He's actually basically the longest by volume fighter that Holloway will have seen in his career. I watched the Poirier fight, and then I went back and watched the McGregor fight. 2 things sort of stood out to me, and I've been hearing a lot about this. Max likes to sit in the pocket, and he's going till the fight's over, and either he wins or you win. When he disengages, Poirier and McGregor were able to constantly drop that throw at least one last jab as they disengage. It happened all night long. And to me, I think that's got to be what Kattar's going in there looking to do if he wants to come out of there with a W. So that's how I see it. I'm excited about it, though. Anytime you get Max Holloway in a ring, dude, I'm there, because to me, no one's going toe to toe like this guy does. I don't know. And my other thought is I'm just not sure if Kattar's got the power to knock out a Max Holloway, who, by the way, has never been knocked out in his career. So he gets hot late. He wins rounds 3, 4, 5, and probably takes a decision. That's how I see it going. But I'm excited for it. Great fight.
This is a litmus test for Kattar to see if he is worthy of being at the top of the featherweight division. So that's the really only thing I'm intrigued at. I expect Max Holloway to dominate this fight, but maybe Kattar can do. Maybe Kattar's going to do a lot better than what I think. Well, what are your thoughts on the fight, Jared?
No, I'm with you, Jace. I'm totally with you. Yeah, Max. I'll take Holloway all day. I'm going away. I don't think this is close. Last time this guy stepped up, he got beat. I think he'll get beat again. I think he falls right about where he falls. I think he can beat most of the guys outside of the top 10, and he'll lose to most of the guys inside the top 10. So I take Holloway going away.
All right. Then to round out fight announcements, finalized 100% Conor McGregor versus Dustin Poirier, January 23rd. That is now International Fight Week due to it being postponed due to COVID. So we talked a lot about this fight. It's finally happening. What do you expect from it, Jared?
I wish I was more excited about this fight. I know it's supposed to be promotional, and I really wish I was more excited about this fight. I'm not a huge fan of either one of these guys. I wish they could both lose, kind of. But I'll take Conor because I feel like the next fight will be more exciting.
Okay.
For him. Yeah, so, that
makes sense.
I wish I had a horse in the race, but I'll take Conor because I like big fights.
Yeah, I don't know. I feel like I've said all I need to say about this fight before it even got signed. I feel like, and I think that's the unfortunate thing about this fight is now, I'm almost like, oh, wait, it didn't even happen yet. You know what? I feel like we've been talking about this fight for so long.
Yeah.
And I don't know if there was ever a moment where I was overly hyped to see it again. So I don't know, drawing this out as long as they have now that it's signed. It's like, okay, just let me know when the fight is and we'll talk about it afterwards. Great.
Yeah.
It's the Sugar Ray effect, my man.
All right. But that's going to do it for fight announcements. Now, let's get into the who you got this week. Who you got on MMA's, not just UFC's, MMA's Heavyweight Mount Rushmore. Jared, hit me with it.
You guys aren't going to like me for this, and I'm hoping to get a better fourth. I have to be honest. I want to hear your guys' list, and I'm hoping to upgrade my fourth.
I struggled on the fourth one as well. I spent a lot of time on this. Because I'm sure the same reasons that you came across. There's a lot of guys that are equally matched. There's some pretty obvious ones for obvious reasons, and then to fill that fourth spot, I had like 4 or 5 guys I seriously considered. I left one off because I figured Jace was going to include him, and I felt like that would be my way of making sure that guy also got his just desserts today. Seriously, this was a really tough list, especially. Well, it was less tough because it was just MMA. Yeah. If you would have said UFC rather, it might have been a little more complicated.
Well, I think we all better have Fedor.
Yes.
I think
we do.
Has to go. Yes.
Yeah, Fedor's my one.
Yes, that one's easy. I bet I'm alone when I say Muhammad Ali. Boxing's a mixed martial art, and I think the most effective of them. So if we're looking for a mixed martial art fighter and I get to have any horse in the race as a heavyweight, I want Ali. I don't
have Ali.
No.
Okay, here's another one. There weren't always weight classes. This guy beat Chemo. He beat a lot of, you know what I'm going to say already, don't you, Jace?
Yes, sir.
I want Hoist Gracie on this list because those are the guys he fought his whole life. His next smallest brother of, was it 8, 9, 10, 11 of them, was 218 pounds. They were all heavyweights. Everybody he fought coming up was in that weight class, and they didn't have any weight classes, so there it was. And I don't even want to say 4. Like, I really want to hear yours. I've got, there's of course Stipe and Miocic, DC maybe. Joe Louis I want to bring into the conversation just because boxing is a mixed martial arts. Hey man, and I looked up judo practitioners. I looked up Olympic wrestlers with 3 gold medals and tried to figure out, is there another guy that I would want in the race here as the heavyweight best mixed martial artist of all time? And there's really not. So I don't know. That 4 spots up for grabs, but it's Hoist Gracie, Muhammad Ali, Fedor, and the mystery man.
Interesting.
Who's next?
Joe?
Well, I hated every minute of that. But this is why I say to Jace all the time when you do these lists, the more open-ended they are, the more likely this is to happen. And, well, here we are. And that's fine. Because I do have Fedor, obviously, at number 1 on my list. The 28 consecutive wins. Come on. That's a little insane. I do like the direction in which you took the assignment, Jared, just so we're clear.
Yeah.
I just wasn't prepared for it, and I didn't read into it like I wished I had now, because I think I could have come up with some good answers. So thank you for that. Number 2 on my list is the guy that ended the streak, Fabrizio Verdum. This guy was great. Racked up quite a few wins. tapped Alexander Gustafsson out last March. He's still doing his thing, and he's beating the Young Bucks at this point. How could you not love that? Antonio Minotauro Nogueira. Love this guy. One of only 3 men to have held championships in Pride and UFC. So that's why he certainly had to make my list. Big wins over Randy Couture, Tim Sylvia, Dan Henderson, Krokop, Mark Coleman, and then went on to become a great trainer. So I gave him that. And then to me, the guy doing it right now, and this is to me the worst part of MMA at times, especially for the UFC, where how many times can we say that the current guy is the greatest one of all time? There's at least 3, as far as I'm concerned, where the current champion is the greatest one of all time in that respective division.
Adesanya?
Actually, no. Funny you should say that. I was thinking John Jones in the lightweight division and Khabib, but you could say Khabib's retired, but until I know he's retired, he's the greatest one I've ever seen. So there's 3. You want to throw Nunez in, there's 4. I think that's one of the things. Look, if you go look at the history of baseball, right? When you're talking about the history of baseball, you're talking about Ty Cobb, Babe Ruth, Lou Gehrig. Most of those guys were like 1915 to like 1930. You're not talking about the guys from 1900. UFC's like in the Babe Ruth era, if you're looking at the history of the sport right now. And so you're going to have guys that are like Khabib that'll be legends forever, especially if Khabib never fights again. I doubt that. Certainly think it's going to happen, but he'd be the greatest of all time. That would be the guy that they'd be talking about for the next 100, 200 years, assuming we can last that long. So that's where the sport's at. But Stipe, most title defenses, with sadly 3. But that's been how the heavyweight division's gone.
Well, and you look at it, we can't replicate stuff for back in the day for these guys any more than we can give guys from back in the day this stuff. So whenever you talk about the greatest, if you're actually talking about matching up that person from the past against this person from the present, all things included, we break records every year at the Olympics. Like you'd like to say what Jim Thorpe would have had done if he had a chambers to sleep in and shoes to run in. But that guy broke 6 school records with football pads on and cleats on a track because he was playing in the football game where he scored 4 touchdowns. So it's fun to say what an athlete like that would have done in today's world. But he was, if he didn't have shoes, he didn't have shoes, and that's how he ran. And if he's running against somebody with all those advantages, they're going to win. It's why when we did that draft, whenever I got the 3rd pick, whenever I start running behind, whenever I don't really see what I'm looking for out there, I took the champion. Because I can always make an argument for the current champion. Because when the Olympics come around, we're going to break 82% of the records are going to fall because we will have gotten a little bit better than we were 4 years ago. That's just progression and evolution and the shoulders of giants. We are but dwarves on the shoulders of giants.
All right. I just got a text from somebody who's a little confused. No, we're not saying that John Jones or Khabib or Nunez is on MMA's heavyweight Mount Rushmore. That's no one said that. And if that's how you took any of this, no.
It's because you were getting ready to say Stipe.
Yeah, because I was saying Stipe as my 4th guy, and then my whole point was I think again for MMA, or especially with the UCF, I think that you still have. Why do I keep calling it the UCF? Am I thinking of the college football team for some reason?
We were excited for their game against Cincy today.
3rd time I think I've said that today. But when you have so many of your current champions where you're like, well, he's at least one of the top 2 or 3 all time in that division, you know what I mean? And I still think that's sort of where you are. That's why, to me, again,
very least, and that's probably my 4th. That's who I default to because you're at least safe making the argument.
Yeah.
For now.
All right. I'll hit you guys with mine. I went like we did the greatest the
It's
UFC's
going to be all wrestlers. CM
No,
Punk,
no, it's not.
Cain
Hulk Hogan,
Velasquez.
The Rock,
Hulk Hogan.
But
Kurt Angle, Triple H. Done.
the way I thought of it, the greatest heavyweight of all time, Fedor,
Yep.
and then the greatest striker in the heavyweight division, Stipe, with his boxing.
Fair.
Then the greatest wrestler in the heavyweight division, my all-time favorite UFC fighter, Cain Velasquez.
Funny. Velasquez is just off my list, and I left him because I said Jace will have him on his list, guaranteed. And there it was. I knew it.
Yeah.
And then last but not least, the greatest jiu-jitsu practitioner in MMA heavyweight division, Fabricio Verdum. But I like the way you took it, Jared, because just you talking makes me think of like Mark Hunt, Alistair Overeem in kickboxing, all the accolades they have there.
Oh, Chung Lee.
Oh, yes.
K1, like he dominated for a long time. You're talking about, he might have been light heavy though. But I started looking for who's the baddest big dude fighter ever, because this mixed martial arts, is all of those: wrestling, boxing, regardless of what organization they fought under or what particular art they were a practitioner of. When you say the greatest mixed martial arts heavyweights, I just think of who were the baddest, biggest dudes, and I want Royce on that list because those were his opponents.
Makes sense.
I was literally just watching last night because I'm a loser. I was watching the original UFC tournament where he faced a kickboxer. You guys remember that? The sumo?
The coolest
French
guys I know have done that, Joe. All of the coolest people I know have done that. So that's
what I was doing last night, dude. Watching Royce and Shamrock going at it. It was great, man. It was it's great stuff. And it's funny because in the video I literally talked about the idea. I guess the other brother was supposed to go, the bigger one, and the father was like, no. Let's send this little puny little the weak one of the group. Royce, you're going. He's like, all right.
Yes.
Yeah, I want to send a small guy to show you that this. Yeah, this works with anybody, against anybody. Check it out. That was great.
Jiu-jitsu is the greatest mixed martial arts of all time, and they went to find the best at each one and landed at the Gracie gym. And yeah, Dad brought him in and said, "Hey, the little runt of the group." Not any of the guys that, are expected to go over there and smash everything. But I'm going to send you my smallest. He had something too. Dad developed it. Gracie Jiu-Jitsu was actually developed. Now, Dad had a lot of brothers too. One of them had like 7 brothers. The other one had like 11 brothers. I think the dad had 11. So the dad's got 11 brothers. He's the smallest of. He's got sickle cell or something. Don't quote me on any of this, but he's got something where he's not growing as fast as the rest of the boys, and figures out they're fighting all the time that if I can isolate an arm, isolate the neck, isolate the leg, the ankle, the foot, if I can make different holds and then isolate a limb, I win the fight if you give up. And they developed tapping, and that was actually Royce's father. Yeah, so when they came to him, he was like, well, this thing I do and this thing I built is so good that my runt will beat all the best fighters on the planet. And that is exactly what happened over and over and over again until UFC 5 when they went away.
Thank you for thinking of the word runt when I said the weakest one. I certainly did not mean to suggest Royce Gracie. I couldn't think of the word runt in my head. I'm like, oh my God, what's that word? The weakest one. Oh no, that's not. I really didn't mean it like that.
The runt of the litter. Yes, sir.
Oh, all right. That was fun. Now let's get in to tonight's fights. UFC 255, where the featherweights are on full display. Let's start off with the co-main event. Women's featherweight champ Valentina Shevchenko takes on the number 3rd ranked contender Jennifer Maia. Prediction, Jared?
This is Shevchenko all day. All day. I don't think it's close. I think Maia gets beat up in this fight. I will be surprised if it lasts a round. If this lasts more than a round, it's because the fight has been made boring by Jennifer Maia. That's my prediction. I don't think it lasts a round. If she can make it a really boring clinch fest, rolling around on the ground, doing all that stuff that we as fans don't like to see. The art of boxing is a little more fun to watch when Katie Taylor does it than the art of wrestling is in the Olympic Games. Name 3 Olympic wrestlers from 2016. Go. See, yeah, that's what I'm saying. It's not fun to watch, and nobody does because it's not fun to watch. So unless Jennifer Maia can make it one of those, snooze fest. What's his name? Michael Venom Page just ended up in the octagon with somebody like that. That was just going to turn it into a really boring fight. If Maia can do that, maybe she can be competitive at times, but I'll be surprised if it's exciting. It doesn't last a round.
I'll tell you why it definitely won't be. Because Shevchenko is possibly the most well-rounded fighter in the sport, male or female. Make no mistake about that. I've been watching an obscene amount of videos on Valentina, including where she and her sister are just doing choreographed dance. That's how into it I've gotten. She's amazing.
Shevchenko sound like a dance?
It does. You've seen her little dances in the ring. I think that is the Shevchenko, and I love it. She's also, I don't know if you guys know this, she's a weapons expert.
Yeah.
There was rumors she was a Russian asset, like that we should keep her eye on Shevchenko, and I'm doing it. I'm doing it on behalf of Department of Homeland Security. I've got my eye on this girl, and I'm going to keep it on her.
Does she have contacts with Hillary?
Yeah, I think so. She does everything I look for when I'm reviewing a fighter.
Shevchenko by force. Watch.
Dude, here's what I'm thinking, right? Valentina's in a league of her own. There's not much else out there in the flyweight division. That's why this is the matchup we're getting. The only losses she's had are to Amanda Nunes. One could argue very convincingly that she'd probably won the rematch. Nunes really wanted no part of Shevchenko, and I mean, how often is it that you say Amanda Nunes didn't want to bring the fight to somebody? She knew what she was getting into. Just the way Shevchenko uses that kick to close and keep distance. It makes everyone else. She's fought some really good fighters. She makes everybody look bad. Because to me, what would work against the top female fighter doesn't work when you're at the Shevchenko level. And again, I think this is another one of those times where we're talking about somebody who's like maybe the best ever, or at least up until this point, the most well-rounded woman in the history of the sport.
Safe to make the argument.
And I'll tell you what, I watched the Maia's last fight, and she put Joanna Calderwood in an armbar. That's how she submitted her. But if you actually watch the fight, she put her in an armbar and lost the hold 3 times before she locked it in. Shevchenko would have choked you to death before you got to that third. There's no way you're getting away with that. The other thing about Maia is, if you watch any of her fights, she's a good fighter, but she likes to walk in and not move her head much. I'm telling you right now, if Shevchenko doesn't drop her out cold, I would be shocked.
Yeah, exactly what I was saying. Early knockout or really boring.
I wrote down TKO in the second round. I think she'll have pull. If she hasn't knocked her out in the first round, I think the second round starts, and within about 30 seconds of round 2, we're done.
Well,
and
yeah,
everybody
and
goes
there's a
home.
few people saying at the beginning of the second round, "Oh, somebody ought to stop this." You know, you're
Yeah.
kind of you're feeling funny
Yeah.
between the first and
Yeah.
second round.
This isn't.
Yeah, I'm
Oh,
on board
by
with
the
that.
way, I don't know if you guys saw the spinning wheel kick that Shevchenko dropped. The beauty of the kick, if you don't know what I'm talking about, please Google this thing. It was one of the greatest kicks I've ever seen. She didn't hit her with the heel. She hit her with the because I don't know if you guys know this too. Shevchenko is never on her heels. She's always bouncing on her toes. Her heels never touch the ground. It's incredible. Okay, spinning wheel kick, and it was like her foot just slapped her across the face. It was one of the most disgusting sounds I've ever heard in my life. Just a foot slapping straight flesh. And then she went and finished pulverizing her a couple minutes later. I mean, this is like two different. This is like two different. Like, this doesn't even seem fair to me. I'll be honest.
No.
Mm.
And it speaks volumes that she's the number 3 contender in the division.
Well, and that's it. That's it. You start to see these, and you know what kind of level Shevchenko's on, and you say, okay, well, how good is Jennifer Maia? And then you look at the rest of the girls out there and say, yeah, she deserves her shot. You know, good luck. Miriam Gutierrez deserved a shot too.
Yeah, the gap between everyone is just astronomical when it comes to Valentina. The only way she got losses was fighting out of her weight class up a weight. Now she's in her actual weight class, just demolishing people. So yeah, this is going to be quick, quick, simple. Even if Jennifer Maia does try to go the boring route and try to just lay on her, Valentina's that good on the ground. She won't let that happen. So this will be over and over quick by Valentina Shevchenko.
By the way, the spinning wheel kick I mentioned was against Caitlin Kukugan. So if you want to, I'm telling you, yeah,
in her own right.
Tell you what, if you haven't seen that fight or at least a wheel kick, check it out just for that because it was amazing.
Speaking of go back and check it out, did you guys see the Jadon Codrington? That's a Connecticut kid too. The broken neck I sent to you, Alan Green.
Yeah,
he will realize that he has been living in a false reality and be in a whole world of hurt when he ends up in the ring with Alan Green. Yeah, man. Yeah.
All right.
Yeah, that's how.
Now, from the co-main event, let's talk about the main event. Flyweight champion Davidson Figueiredo, my bad, faces off against number 4 ranked Alex Perez. Jared, you picked Figueiredo in your draft.
Can we just loop everything we said for the last 5 minutes and play it back? Because this is the same thing. It's like it speaks to how good I think Figueiredo is that he's facing the number 4 guy, and I'm going, upper echelon, yeah, maybe, but is he going to put it? It's the same fight. If it makes it 2 rounds, it's because it's boring, or you're going, oh, somebody should step in and stop this. It looks like a mismatch to me on paper, and to have him number 1 and number 4. And the ranking system in the UFC is, unlike boxing, is pretty legit. So, yeah, I think the champs hold form here.
Bear with me on this one for a second, okay? This is the first card that's headlined by flyweight since Demetrius Johnson versus Benavidez in 2013. Okay, yeah. Now, interestingly, Figueiredo split Jusir Formiga's head wide open in the only loss he suffered in his career. I don't know if you guys are aware of this. He was up 30-27, 29-28, 29-28. He lost this fight by decision, despite the fact he was beating Formiga's brains in all fight. You know what did it? Takedowns. Formiga took him down at will all fight long. It was insane, and you get the right judges out there. That's a win for Formiga. Now, Benavidez, the number 1 flyweight in UFC. Figueiredo beat him twice this year, February and in July. Benavidez beat Formiga. See how this goes? He's also beaten Alex Perez. Here we go again. Benavidez great fighter, but lost twice to Demetrius Johnson, lost twice to Dominic Cruz, and twice to Figueiredo. Joe never wins the big one. That's rough. Now, I know Alex Perez ranked 4th, 24-5, 12 decisions, 7 submissions, 5 KOs. He's a wrestler, Brazilian jiu-jitsu. He boxes. His only loss in the UFC since he's been in the UFC was by Benavidez. His past 3 fights, a decision, a submission, and a TKO of Jacier Formiga. See it again? He beat him with vicious leg kicks because he wanted to stop the takedowns. The same takedowns Figueiredo couldn't stop. This is Figueiredo's first title defense. I don't know. I think Perez has the weapons to keep the God of War off his aggressive style. He can control the fight like Formiga did. I think Alex can submit him on the ground. He can get back up and knock him out. This is a tough fight. Jared Brooks, who was a high school wrestler, he's the world's best strawweight. When he got Figueiredo, he lost the fight, but he tossed him around the ring like a rag doll all night. So I know you look at this and it's like, oh, Figueiredo's a great fighter, and he is. He's a great striker. Alex Perez might be the wrong fight for him, Jared. That's what I'm saying. I think this might be the wrong guy for him, unless, as you say, and we'll see early, if he just completely outclasses Perez. But I suspect an upset.
Oh,
yeah, I'm with Joe here. I'm
gonna take Perez. Listen. I don't. Sometimes I say these things and be like, you don't like Figueiredo. I do. I think he's fantastic, but to me, this is one of those where like I do all the math. He beat him. Ooh, I don't like this. I don't like this one for him at all.
Yeah, I'm with Joe here. I like Figueiredo. Man, I think he's good, but the way you're talking, Jared, he sounds like Mighty Mouse. He's not that good. He definitely has some flaws. And I think Alexander Perez, I'm not going to go as far out on a limb as Joe and say Alexander Perez is going to pull off the upset. But I think he will keep it very, very close, and it will be tough. I think the flyweight divisions were pretty tough. I think we might be seeing some back and forth here.
Joe, you just reminded me something. Now I bared with you. You have to bear with me too. Okay, you ready?
Absolutely.
You know Matt Bassett. Have you guys heard of Matt Bassett?
Yeah.
He's a lightweight MMA practitioner. Was in the UFC once, twice. He's a local kid, right? So this is from his Facebook. So it must be real. Now, Matt Bassett beat Diego Nunes, who beat Mike Brown, who beat Uriah Faber, who beat Dominic Cruz, who beat TJ Dillashaw, who beat Asuncion, who beat Joe Lozon, who beat Diego Sanchez, who beat Josh Koscheck, who beat Anthony Johnson, who beat Andrei Arlovsky, who beat Stefan Struve, who beat Stipe Miocic. So
nailed it. He beat Stipe.
In other words, current UFC heavyweight champion and greatest fighter of all time, Matt Bassett, lives right here in CT. Trains locally.
Bassett.
My man's in there.
He's on my Rushmore. He's on my Rushmore of badass name droppers. That's great.
Yeah,
I love that.
Yeah, so you can draw whatever conclusions you want. I'm not with you guys. I think this is a dominant performance. It gets outclassed. I think both of the champions outclassed the opposition tonight.
See, here's the thing. If you watch Figueiredo on takedowns, he likes to try to throw you in the guillotine. What happens with wrestlers who are good is they lift you and bury you into the ground, and you tend to lose the hold on the guillotine. And against Formiga, that's what happened. And so again, that's why I say, if as I'm watching Alex Perez fight, the way Figueroa, the way I'm telling you, the way he defenses against takedowns is bad. Well, it can be good against the right guy. Against a really skilled guy, I just think it's going to become a problem. Hopefully he can just knock him out early, and that might be your best bet, Jared. But I think the longer this fight goes, the worse off your guy's going to be here.
How many fights is the Alex Perez reign if he wins?
Short, real short. Real short. I don't think this guy's going to go on a tear.
Figueiredo have the potential to win 3, 4, 5 in a row here.
If he can beat this guy, who I think is just this is a bad matchup for him, just stylistically. Okay. If he gets by this, then he probably can reel off 3, 4 in a row. Maybe goes on. Who knows? I mean, again,
like Matt.
I'm not saying he's not a great fighter. This is the one that I just on paper, Jared, I immediately was like, oh, this looks like a cakewalk. Started doing some serious research. And the more I was like, it even got to a point, my brother will tell you, we looked at each other and we were like, oh, Perez will give him a fight for sure. And then the more we talked about more Perez fights we watched, I was like, I'm going to say Perez wins it. And he looked at me and he was like, I'm not going to argue that. And so this was a consensus decision by me and my brother really thinking about this one. I feel good about it. But
this will be fun to touch on next week, boy.
I would be thrilled if Figueiredo wins. Don't get me wrong, because I really like him. I think he's a great fighter. If he can get by this one, in my eyes, he's up here now. Because this is the kind of fight where if you asked him, do you want this guy? He'd be like, no. Because I just lost to a guy like this. The only time I've ever lost, it was this exact kind of guy. So kudos to him if he could pull it off. And I really do hope he does, but I'm not feeling it.
All right. Now we are going to end the show like we always do. And Jared, hit us with that Flurry.
When I was struggling with active addiction and alcoholism, I remember being parked outside of a package store waiting for it to open. And not the only time I did that. I remember drinking NyQuil and other things to try to supplement when I ran out and package stores were closed. I remember looking for pills when I was actively addicted to opiates, making 100 phone calls to friends of friends of friends of friends, trying to get what I was looking for. When I was smoking crack, the people around me would have run into a burning building for a rock. I've never done heroin, and I don't care to talk about some of the things I've seen people capable of doing when battling that. Active addiction. These lives are effectively nightmares, and I wouldn't wish the struggles on anyone. But if and when we find recovery, we end up having things that nobody else has. We have an extra gear. We're more aware of what we're capable of as human beings. We understand what it takes and what it means to do everything within our capability to get what we want. And I've seen a lot of people apply that to their lives in recovery. Quick story. In 1981, a 14-year-old abandoned her 1-month-old son. He was passed back and forth between relatives for a little while. He was beaten and horribly mistreated. I'm going to skip some of the particulars, but at 9 years old, he ran away. He was homeless, crossed several countries looking for his mom, ate roadkill. Just a homeless child looking for his mom. And finally finds her. She's with this other guy and forces him to prove that he is who he says he is by a birthmark on him. Look up Edison Miranda. This guy went on to win Olympic medals. 15, he walks into a boxing gym. Several times over, world champion. Edison Miranda. I looked him up in preparation for this Flurry, and as of January of last year, he was arrested on some drug charges. So this great story that I've had my whole life about that extra gear turned into one of relapse and trauma just recently. But the point is, all the people in recovery that I'm waiting now when I work to make sales, when I'm doing something for scrub scraps, I'm watching the clock, I'm sitting there waiting a la outside the package store. I'm sober, but I have that gear to show up early and stay late and do everything that has to be done to keep the things that I have in my life that keep me healthy and sober. And there are so many people around me with that extra gear that when the building starts on fire, they're the people you want standing next to you. The people you want running with you every day because they understand trauma. If you're battling active addiction or have experienced severe trauma, hang on. Keep fighting. There's hope for the future, and that future full of hope involves a light that most people aren't even capable of seeing. Thank you, guys.
Oh, I'm muted. My bad. Thank you, Jared, for sharing that. And it goes past addiction, and it's just mental illness in general, depression, everything. You got to realize that hope. You got to find that light at the end of the tunnel, and I appreciate you sharing that. Very powerful.
Jace, I don't envy you having to end these shows after Jared does this to us. I swear to God, dude, it's like I just want to cry. It's like now Jace has to do like the whole outro of the show. How do you even transition out of there? I was like, oh, muted microphone. Good call.
Figured out the segue. Yeah.
Jared, man, that was yeah. Thank you for that. Listen, I love this, and I love that we talk about this stuff, and that we address that there is a whole other level to fighting and to humanity, and that's the mental part of it, and how important that is, and I don't think you could say it enough to people, Jared, that there's someone here if you need it. There's help if you need it. Just ask, where it will come get you. And that's the way we got to be. There's a country that's so divided right now, and it has a bad drug problem as well. Obviously, fighting a giant disease. I mean, these are the kinds of things that you hope Americans can sort of bond over and sort of come together on. These are the things.
Share
because these things,
reel.
These things affect everybody, Jared. The drugs, it's not just black people. It's not just white people. It's not just men or women or old or young. It's everybody. It's rich. It's poor. Everybody, anybody who has to fight this animal, they need help. It doesn't matter who you are, what your resources are. If you don't have the support staff around you, it will never happen. And it's I love that we can dedicate time to this show to literally address these issues, and for you to share some. I mean, it's incredible, and so thank you.
Yeah, thank you a lot, Jared. Very powerful. And we need people need a platform. You have yours here, and people need to hear this stuff. And some things are bigger than the ring and fighting, But with all that, thank you guys for watching. A reminder that this is a CMG podcast. Come, if you're interested in starting your own podcast, come join Clovercrest Media Group Podcast Network. If not, if you're looking for another podcast to listen to, make sure you go to clovercrestmedia.com, pick out of the 30 different ones that are there. And thank you, Joe and Jared, for joining me today. And we enjoy the fights this weekend, and we hope to see you next time. Peace out.
Ladies and gentlemen, this is our main event.